All right, so we are here today with our very own Madeline Birkner. Madeline, do you want to start by introducing yourself and your role at the Philadelphia Education Fund?
Sure. My name is Madeline Birkner. I've been working at the Philadelphia Education Fund for almost a decade. I used to work in schools, but now my job allows me to travel across schools in the district and around the city to help students understand financial aid in a wide way. I particularly focus on young people who have experience in the foster care system, helping them understand that they too can go to college, can continue on into post-secondary. I also run a summer program for high school students that helps them connect to some sort of academic curiosity in the summers. And then lastly, I help guide and steer the Ed Funds programming for college students who have graduated from our high school level programs and continued on to college, offering them academic and social support so they can make the most of their time in college.
Thanks, Madeline. And could you share the name of that summer program and where students can find more information if they are interested in joining?
Yeah, if you're interested in doing something fun with your summer, there's so many options. We run something called Scholars Advantage. It is for students who attend high schools that have Gear Up programming inside. So there's a whole list of, I want to say, 12 high schools across the district. This year, we'll be working with ninth graders. So if you're in ninth grade and you attend a high school in the district that has a Gear Up program, and you want to do something this summer that gets you a little money in your pocket, but also connects you academically to an area of interest. It's called Scholars Advantage. We will be publishing that application probably in April. It's a 4-week paid summer program. It'll be located downtown in person, and you can earn a little bit of money.
Oh, that's awesome. So everybody keep an eye out. So we're here to talk to Madeline today about financial aid, in particular the FAFSA and financial aid award letters. So Madeline, could you start by just sharing in a nutshell, what is the FAFSA and why is it so important for students and families to complete?
I can never fit things in a nutshell. So I'm actually going to take students back in time to understand how financial aid was dealt with in the past. So way, way, way before the internet, if you were a student and you wanted to go to college, you would apply to a couple different places, and then you'd have to fill out a financial aid form for each of those different colleges. You'd be answering the same questions about your name, your address, your school, who you live with at home, the finances of the family. And what happened was the federal government stepped in and created one form called the FAFSA. So this is a government application where the student fills it out one time, and that information is shared not only with the government to see what kind of government provided financial aid you could get, but it's also shared out to each of the colleges that the student indicates they want to apply to. So it really, we kind of treat the FAFSA like it's this big burden or it's this big problem that needs to be solved, but really it's kind of a solution to a bigger problem, which is you need to share your information out to colleges. You don't want to do that 1,000 times. And so you can fill out the FAFSA just one time when you're a senior and share really critical information with all of the colleges or trade schools on your list. So the FAFSA is really important because it provides those colleges with the most accurate information about what your family can or can't afford when it comes to paying for school. It also opens up that wide world of financial aid from the government. And that's really important. If there's money out there that we have all paid for through our taxes, you don't want to leave that on the table. So it's really doing two jobs here, giving the information to the colleges that allows them to prepare something very personalized and individual for you, the student, but it also allows you to tap into sources of financial aid like grants in addition to loans that the government provides.
Thank you. That context was so helpful, and I think it's really nice to hear FAFSA framed as a solution because it is often talked about as something that isn't can be, intimidating and daunting. But to hear, kind of the alternative of doing this for each individual college, it's all of a sudden the FAFSA seems like a very streamlined process.
Yeah, and I
So
don't want to make it sound like FAFSA always works exactly how we want it to, but it does save time if you can be prepared and if you have that mindset of this is going to help me really quickly share my information automatically with a lot of different schools.
So you mentioned grants from the government. Can you talk a little bit about what that means exactly?
So the US government has lots of money allocated each year, set aside each year to help students go to college. And that's not because they're running a charity. It's because it's so important for young people to invest in themselves, to get skills that we need so that our economy can grow, so that we can fill positions and we don't have shortages in really important jobs. We hear a lot about there's teacher shortages, there's nursing shortages, right? But also there's jobs that haven't been invented yet. And so we need a really, really well-trained group of people who are coming up to step into these jobs. And so the government has provided a number of different what we call programs, aid programs that they can offer to students depending on what they need. So it makes sense. If you need more, you probably qualify for more. So some families, if they have high need, might qualify for grants. The biggest grant program is called the Pell Grant. So I want you to remember that Pell Grant. And the Pell Grant is used almost like a coupon. A student can bring that Pell Grant in their backpack, sort of symbolically, to whatever college, university, or trade school they decide to attend. And the value of that coupon does not change. That Pell Grant stays the same whether you're going to a very expensive college or a more affordable college. And you can choose where to bring that Pell Grant. There are other grant programs as well that are operated at the school level. The federal government also operates loan programs so that students who don't have credit histories can borrow a certain capped amount of money. You can't borrow all the money in the world. Um, and they can help fund their education that way as well. That's an option. You'll be offered that if you qualify, but nobody can compel you to take a loan you don't want. So by filling out the FAFSA, you see if you qualify for that free money, those grants, as well as loans. That answer.
So, absolutely. So now I know why the FAFSA is so important. What do I need to do to fill it out?
The first thing is you need to make sure it's the right timing for you. So if you're a 10th grader watching this, if you are a parent of a ninth grader, you can cool it for a couple of years. Make sure if you are working and you file taxes that you keep that really well organized. You'll need them in the future. But if you are a senior in high school, if you're in 12th grade right now and you're planning to attend college in the fall or even the spring of next year, it's really important that you prepare for your FAFSA if you haven't already. That's the only way to get all this money that's out here on the table. It's the only way for colleges or universities or trade schools to know how much you need, right? That's how they get that information. So the first things I would do is really take stock of where you want to go. Think about if you've applied places yet, if you haven't, and we need to get on that, right? Because the time is ticking down. So think about where. Then you want to think about who do you live with at home. FAFSA is obsessed with your parents. That's a really important thing to understand, but not everybody lives with their parents. So if you live in a situation where you don't reside with a parent, you probably want to get talking to your high school counselor as soon as you can, or you can always drop questions to us through our platforms. But we need to get to the bottom of who you live with at home because FAFSA is going to ask about the income that your parents have earned in the 2022 year. So that year beginning January, ending December of 2022, there will be questions on this FAFSA asking about parent income. So that is the kind of first think work you need to do. The next things you need to do is track down some of your documentation. So if you know your social, you have it memorized back, front, and sideways, that's excellent. If not, go track down your social security card. Students can fill out FAFSA if they're citizens, US permanent residents, or otherwise what we call eligible non-citizens. And there's a list of that on the FAFSA webpage if you're not sure if you count. But if generally speaking, if you were born in the United States, if you have a green card, you can fill out a FAFSA, even if your parents don't have those things. So you need to track down that number to create your account at studentaid.gov. You'll also, this is really important, need a working email address. And if you go to a high school in the school district of Philadelphia, I'm going to say, do not use your school district email address. You're getting too many emails from Google Classroom, and also that email address will disappear when you graduate. So you want to choose an email address that doesn't have too much spam. Maybe you could create a whole new account just for this, and then you'll link that email account to your new FAFSA account. The step-by-step is pretty easy if you go on the studentaid.gov website, but you do need to make sure you have that email address before you start and you have your social security card or number before you start as well. And then from there, the process will unfold depending on your family circumstances.
So you shared that parents are often very critical to this process. What does it mean for a parent to be a contributor, which is the term that's being used this year for a parent who is completing this form? What does that mean for a parent in terms of their financial investment in their child's college education?
What's important for a parent to know is that your commitment to your child doesn't end at their 18th birthday. I hear that a lot from students. Well, miss, I'm already 18. I don't need to involve my parents. And unfortunately for the from the perspective of FAFSA, from the perspective of the federal government, a student, they live with their parent or parents, they're usually considered dependent on that parent until at least the age of 26, I want to say. You might want to fact check me on that. So unfortunately, if you have a child who's 18, you don't just get to say, well, they're an adult. Unless that student is the head of their own household, paying their own rent, paying for their own food, chances are that parent does have to be involved at the point of filling out FAFSA. So the parent would have to provide their name. If they have a social, they would put their social, their birthday. If parents are married to one another, then both parents might be included. If the parent that the student lives with has a new spouse, or any kind of spouse rather, then that spouse might have to be included, but the whole family's finances would need to be reflected. And that's how the FAFSA determines how much money a student might get in terms of grants. That does not necessarily obligate the parent to contribute even a dollar to their student's education, right? I have seen situations where parents are opposed to paying for college at all, or they're just unable, even though perhaps the formula states that they could, based on the math. But FAFSA cannot take money out of a bank account. FAFSA cannot compel an adult to pay. This is just to give a sense to gauge what the student would qualify for. And the logic behind that is families that have more would be expected to contribute more to their children's education. Families that have less are not as expected to pay for their students' education. Filling out FAFSA doesn't push you in one direction or another. It gives information based on the information that you provide. And that information is primarily verified through tax records. So based on earned income, and then there are some asset-based questions. That's how it's calculated what a family could afford. But again, that parent is not legally obligated to contribute the amount calculated.
That's incredibly helpful clarification. And so you mentioned, time is ticking. We're recording this in March 2024. What do students and families need to know about deadlines for submitting the FAFSA and timelines for when they'll receive financial aid award letters, particularly because we do know that this year, of course, that timeline has been pushed for to allow for the creation of this better FAFSA form. So what do the timelines look like this year?
Well, it's no secret that the rollout of this new version of FAFSA hasn't been what any of us really expected. Even with the most cautious guesses, we still were kind of caught, surprised that it has been so difficult for so many families. So I just want to start off by saying everybody's in the same boat. Nobody's particularly pleased about how this has gone, whether it's current college students, whether it's financial aid offices, high school counselors, and then students who are brand new to this process. We're all in the same boat. We're all kind of equally inconvenienced. So I would just say, let's take a breath for a second before we start to panic. I've had students text me, Miss, I'm not getting this and this. Am I the only one? And I just want to say, rest assured, you're not the only one experiencing these hiccups, these hurdles. With that said, it's really important that each student follows the guidance of the colleges, universities, or trade schools that you're applying to. There were some colleges that have their own financial aid that they like to give out. They have lots of money in dollars that they like to allocate. And some of those more selective colleges, meaning colleges that can't admit all of the qualified applicants who apply, they might have had really early deadlines to fill out other financial aid forms as well. So, you really have to go by the guidance of the college, university, or trade school you're applying to. That said, a lot of colleges are stating outright, we're being flexible this year. We understand things aren't going as planned. And in particular, for students who come from what we call mixed status households, meaning the student has a social security number, but the parent does not. Those students have effectively been put on hold, and they really have a hard time completing this form and moving through it because of the parent lack of social and the lack of a solution from the federal government. So those students should probably be in active contact with their colleges to say, what do you recommend? Because this is my particular situation. For other students who have submitted a FAFSA and are just waiting, 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 that's kind of what we're all doing. We're all just waiting, waiting, waiting. And if you're a student who can fill out a FAFSA but just hasn't yet, I would say there's no there's no benefit to keep waiting. You really should try to get it done as quickly as possible so that the colleges, when they do get your information, can use it to right away evaluate you for aid.
And I think that's just such a helpful point to remind students and families that colleges are there to help. They know everybody, is in the same boat, and that communicating with the college is not only something you can do, but something you should do, right? Calling the college admissions offices, the financial aid offices, you're not, bothering anyone. You're not jeopardizing your chances of getting in by calling being proactive in that relationship is something that they are it's something that they're there to support, right? They are there to take your calls and to assist you. So I have submitted my FAFSA, but I am just waiting around for that financial aid award letter. What do I do in the meantime to be proactive in this process?
So yay, congrats, you filled out your FAFSA. To be proactive, my recommendation is keep your eyes on your email inbox. If you are from the state of Pennsylvania and you intend to stay in state, there's another pot of money from a different level of government, from our state government. And that is issued through an agency called FEA, Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. And FEA offers grants to students who qualify. Again, if you're mostly intending to stay in state, that FIA money can really come through for you and add a lot of really helpful dollars to your bill, or to satisfy your bill. So we don't want to sleep on FIA. And FIA is also undergoing some changes this year. The way that new applicants will complete this form has changed. And because FAFSA is so tardy, the FIA rollout has been tardy as well. And I've been told that students need to keep their eyes on their email inboxes because whatever account you used to complete your FAFSA will receive an email from FIA when it becomes available, prompting you to complete that application as well. Now, that application is a lot simpler than the FAFSA application. It doesn't take nearly as much time. It's a couple clicks of a button, but it's really important, especially if you're staying in state, to fill that out to see what else you might qualify for. So step one, keep your eyes on your inbox. Step two, in terms of being proactive, students can actually use things called net price calculators on their college's websites. They are calculator features that allow you to put in some of the same info you would have put on a FAFSA, and you might get a ballpark sense of your financial aid offer from the college that you're interested in. So let's say, for example, you're interested in Villanova. You can go to Villanova's net price calculator, utilize the information more or less that you used on a FAFSA and fill that out and get a sense of where you might be standing if you got into Villanova and were offered financial aid. Now, if your family is looking at that number and going, whoa, that's way off from what we thought we could afford, to me, being proactive means thinking about solutions to that problem, right? Is this a college that you would be willing to take out an additional loan for? Would you like to explore payment plans? Considering other scholarships that you could be applying for in the meantime to bring in outside aid. So these are different things that the student can do. A lot of scholarship deadlines are happening, and I know Philly Goes to College always has a great database filled with scholarships that we're constantly publishing. You have to keep up on those deadlines because even $1,000 here, $500 there, 3,000 here, that can really add up. So just to recap, step one, really stay on top of your email and the communications. Step two, fill out FIA when it becomes available. Step three, consider what your family would do if there was a gap between the cost of your education and the financial aid you've been offered. What would you do in that situation? right? Are there savings that you could tap into? Because you need to have a plan to cover that bill when the bill comes due. So those are my big pieces of advice for what you can do while we're in this waiting period.
That's a fantastic list. And I'm just wondering, so for the state grant, for the FIA grant, how much money are we possibly talking?
Ooh, that's a great question. This is a little boring, but I'm going to go for it. So your Pell Grant, I mentioned, if you fill out your FAFSA and at the end it says your Pell Grant estimate is, that's money that travels with you kind of no matter the cost of your college. If you go to the Community College of Philadelphia, that Pell Grant from FAFSA is going to cover probably an entire year. Whereas if you go to Villanova, which is a very expensive college, it's just a drop in the bucket, right? But it's the same amount. Fiat works a little differently. Fiat actually offers you different amounts depending on the type of college you enroll in. So if you go to the Community College of Philadelphia, you wouldn't receive the same amount of money in a FIA grant than if that same student went to Villanova. So at Villanova, because it's a private four-year university, a FIA grant could be more than $5,000. I've seen it really depends on how our state allocates money each year, which is why it's important to vote, my friends. So I've seen FIA grants that are $5,000 or more when a college is a private four-year university. A place like Temple University, which is a four-year state related, would earn a different amount. And then a place like Westchester, which is a four-year PASHE school, they're different categories, they would also have a different amount. And then community colleges, I believe, are capped around $1,500 a year. Just because usually if you're qualifying for that FIA grant, you also qualified for that full Pell Grant or at least a partial Pell Grant, and you probably don't need a whole lot more money to satisfy your bill. So FIA really depends, but I would say if you're a family that has high need, if you're qualifying for a Pell Grant, you do not want to forget to fill out that FIA form. To my knowledge, the deadline for the FIA state grant form will still be May 1st. I actually should verify that since it is a weird year. But for community colleges, you have until August 1st to fill out that FIA grant.
That is a very important email to keep an eye out for. And the subject line might not be as exciting as the like 20% off from my favorite store with all the emojis and the capitals and the marketing language, but that one is worth a lot more money. So woohoo, my financial aid award letter is here. It probably hasn't come in the mail. It's probably come via email or even my college student portal. It is now here. What do I do?
So let's define what a financial aid award letter even is. Let's back it up, right? So you fill out your FAFSA, you send it off to the colleges on your list. And if you get into those colleges, the financial aid office will prepare a personalized offer for you based on the cost of that particular college, the scholarships and financial aid programs that that particular college can offer, as well as any of the grant programs that you are eligible for, that you qualified for because you filled out that FAFSA in the FIA. So it is a compilation. It is a bringing together of all these different sources of aid. But I want everyone to keep in mind that that offer is only that offer for that school. So let's say you go to Villanova and you're offered, I'm inventing this entirely, a presidential scholarship, and it's worth $40,000. That doesn't mean you can go over to Chestnut Hill College and say, hey, can I use this presidential scholarship? Chestnut Hill College would have its own offers, its own named scholarships. And so the private financial aid from each school won't necessarily travel across. That said, sometimes students can, if they really want to go to one school, but they didn't get as good financial aid, sometimes they show them the offer from another school to see if that college could compete or match. You have to consider that colleges want to bring you in. If they've admitted you, want you to come to their school. They want you to pick them, right? And so sometimes if a financial aid offer isn't enough, but you got a better one somewhere else, you can occasionally show that to colleges and say, can you help me get there? But otherwise, the offer you're receiving is specific to you and specific to that school. So I also want to caution you against comparing financial aid between friends, because your friend might have different academic circumstances, might have different family circumstances, might have special skills or talents that they bring to the table. There's all these different variables involved. So you really can only compare the offers that you've received, and then consider the types of colleges that you're receiving them from and whether there are some similarities. So, a piece of advice I have is if you're applying to a number of PASHE schools, those are our state universities that are across the state of Pennsylvania, places like Bloomsburg, Westchester, Shippensburg, East Stroudsburg, lots of Bergs, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, right? They're all in the same category. If you are getting wildly different offers between them, since they are the same category of school, you could reach out to Kutztown and say, hey, I got this aid offer from Bloomsburg. And sometimes they're able to either match that or pump up your financial aid a little bit. Ultimately, students need to make sure that they're getting financial aid offers from all of the colleges they've been admitted to. If you've been admitted to a college and you still haven't received aid after a certain period of time, it could be that you forgot to list them on your FAFSA, and they're not going to prepare financial aid for you if they never received your information. So it's really important to make sure that every college that you apply to is getting your FAFSA so that they can prepare those personalized offers. From there, what I recommend students to do is to use maybe Google Sheets or Excel, or you can just use a piece of notebook paper and do some very simple mathematical problems, right? Where you can calculate the cost to attend that college, subtract out the financial aid, start by doing the grants only, see what's left over, see if you need to borrow the loans you've been offered, see what's left over, and then compare those different amounts, right? If the college that you really, really, really want to go to, that you think is the best fit for you, is $1,000 more than the college that you'd be okay with, you can decide maybe that extra $1,000 is really worth it. And maybe you find a way to make that happen. So it's important for you to have a sense of what your out-of-pocket costs would be at each school and that you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
Madeline, this has all been so incredibly helpful. And as our final question, if you don't mind sharing, can you talk a little bit about what you remember about completing the FAFSA as a prospective college student yourself, or about, how financial aid impacted your own college journey?
Sure. So I was 17 when I went to college and I didn't know anything. I really didn't even have a good sense of the scale of money. And I went to college a long time ago. I was primarily looking at private colleges. And once you get above a certain amount, it all seems kind of like funny money. So I really don't think I had a mature sense of what I was getting into or what my obligations would be. I was very lucky I had supportive parents. I have a mom who taught me how to be the right kind of annoying, where she would call financial aid offices, and if she felt like she wasn't getting the right answer, she would just be as sweet as pie and keep asking the questions. So I did notice that, is that if I felt like, my mom always, she was well known, but she was well known in a what I call polite, annoying way. And she taught me to never feel bad about asking questions. Ultimately, I was choosing between really two colleges. One that I didn't, for a variety of reasons, decided I didn't really want to attend, but they gave me a lot better financial aid than the college that I did end up attending. And we did leverage that. We did bring that to the table and say, well, she's been offered this. What can you do? And then the college that I actually ended up attending did increase my grant so that it would be affordable for my family. Um, and then throughout college, I just remember I did feel a lot of pressure that I wanted to keep my grades up so that I could keep getting scholarships. And I did borrow to attend college. And I've paid that back, fortunately, because I borrowed an amount that was not crazy. I was following basically the federal borrowing plan. So, it is possible if for my family, it was a combination of what my family could contribute themselves. Their employer contributed some to my college, and then I was expected to have savings from work as well as borrow in my own name and pay that back when I graduated. But I definitely didn't understand all of this. We definitely had to ask questions. I've definitely felt that little bit of fear when things don't line up exactly right, and you have to call the financial aid office and say, what's going on, right? Why can't I register for classes? And you have to work through those little snafus, those little hurdles. And then in the end, I'll just say college has enabled me to do the kind of work that I really like. I wouldn't have this job if I didn't have a college degree. I wouldn't have this job if I didn't take on a little bit of debt, let my future self pay for my past self so that I could get to the point in life and live the lifestyle that I want and have the kind of job that I really like. So for me, tackling that bear that is financial aid and the FAFSA is really worth it. And every family is different, but I hope that you feel really informed about the choices that you make. That's the important part. You can make a different choice than your best friend as long as you're dealing with really good information that informs your decision.
Oh, what a wonderful real life example of how you can advocate for yourself and how, even though this might all seem a little overwhelming, a little scary, it's temporary. You get through it and you can leave with something as valuable as a college degree that's going to shape your future. So, thank you, Madeline, so much for being with us. Really appreciate all of the incredible information and insight you bring.